Hey, Café connoisseurs, I'm really excited. Thanks for hanging out with us. You know what we do here. We give you inspiring stories with transformative insights. And today is no different. I want you to be able to master your health. And in order to do that, I want to bring you people who can help us do that. Today, I want you guys to meet Jacob Williams. Jacob Williams, in his daytime job, is a true maestro of visual storytelling. He's an award-winning producer and director with over 25 years of experience. He tells compelling stories. He created compelling commercials. You've all seen some of these. They're big giants like American Express, Volkswagen. You've all seen these before. But Jacob's life stopped when he got the call nobody wants to get. He got the call that he had prostate cancer. But this is not your usual prostate cancer tale, so I don't want you to turn away. I want you to see how he charted his own course. He forged his own path, embracing unconventional ways of treatment, and they defy norms.
Next on the Health Mastery Cafe.
Hey, it's Dr. Contessa, and you are watching the Health Mastery Cafe with Dr. Dave.
Joining us at the cafe counter is Jacob Williams. Thank you so much for being here, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We were saying that this is the first time you really are telling this story on a public platform that will be out for people to see. So I appreciate that. Before we get started, though, we always ask the question, what's in your cup? I have green tea. What's in your cup?
I'm a green tea man as well. I'm drinking matcha.
Yeah.
I like matcha. If I've been up late, I might get a shot of espresso in it. But
espresso in the matcha.
Oh, absolutely, man. Tastes like dark chocolate.
And you're bouncing off the walls.
Oh yeah. Without a doubt. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But like I said, if it's a late night and you need a wake-up shot, that combo together, pop.
All right.
It'll pop you right away. But usually it's just tea.
Yeah. We're going to talk about that sleep next time. But I want us to delve into the story because that's what people are waiting to hear. Can you take us back through that moment when you first got, whether it was a call or you were sitting in the doctor's office? Walk us through the moment you were told that you had prostate cancer.
I was in the doctor's office, and this was after having a biopsy. So I went back to get my results. And that's when the doctor told me that they had found cancer. And once you hear that word cancer and it's used at you, it's like, you've seen television shows where, a bomb goes off and the hero is dazed and he's walking around. He can't hear anything, but you could hear all the noise behind him, people talking to him. It's all muffled.
Yeah.
That's what it's like.
You're
stunned.
Surreal. Yeah.
You're stunned. You can't hear anything. Your mind is going all over the place.
Right.
All the things that you've heard that you don't know, like you don't know what to anticipate.
Yeah.
All that's running through your head. You can't comprehend anything the doctor's saying after he said you have cancer
in the visit,
at that moment.
Yeah.
I felt bad that I went to that particular visit by myself.
You didn't have somebody with you.
I didn't have anybody with me, so I had nobody else to, keep that conversation on course for my benefit.
Yeah.
It really was. I was stunned for a long time, and he was talking. I comprehended nothing he said after that.
Yeah.
For a while.
We jumped to the diagnosis. But your path to that diagnosis was very windy and circuitous. You didn't learn that you had prostate cancer until after several other steps.
Absolutely.
Take us through the very first part when you got the blood test.
After getting a PSA and the doctor said to me, your PSA is at a 4, It was like an emergency. He instantly sent me to a urologist.
So for everybody, PSA, prostate-specific antigen, that's the blood test that we use now to screen for the presence of prostate cancer. So your PSA was 4. Normal, what did they tell you normal was?
It was under 4. Anything under 4. Anything under 4 is normal. So when I got to a 4, it was like, whoa, oh my God, it was like an emergency. So went to the urologist. Urologist also gave me another PSA exam. I had another blood test.
Right.
I was sent out to get an MRI.
So they said, get another blood test because...
I just needed, that doctor needed to confirm that
Right.
it was a 4.
Right.
And after I got that confirmation, they were like, okay, so now it's time for us to dig a little deeper.
So
Let's see
four came back twice.
Right. So let's see what's inside your prostate.
Right.
Go get an MRI. I went and got an MRI.
The MRI was first.
The MRI was first, before the biopsy.
Got it.
So I got an MRI, and it came back showing something. They didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
So they wanted to dig a little deeper. So then I had a biopsy. Getting the biopsy, they take samples of the actual organ.
The actual prostate.
They take samples of your organ out, your prostate, and then they send it off to a lab.
Yeah.
The pathologist looks at it under a microscope, came back negative.
Okay.
So
let's put a pause on it, though, because that sounded like it's a piece of cake. You just go and take a couple pieces of prostate. We walk out the door. We know the prostate biopsy experience, although really important, is not fun and games.
it's not a piece of cake. It's not a piece of cake at all. Now I had several biopsies. Okay, so I had
Several biopsies.
I had several biopsies because my PSA kept rising.
Okay.
So
So take us through that experience. You're there. What does that feel like as the person getting a prostate biopsy?
It's not nice.
Did they sedate you?
Okay, so I've had two that I was locally sedated.
Right. So they give you a little numbing medicine.
They give you a little numbing medicine, but they're taking a piece of your prostate, so it's a wide mouth needle that has a clip on it, and it clips a piece of the organ.
Right.
You can feel that clip in the head of your penis. Boom,
Ooh.
boom, boom, and they take like 12 to 16 samples.
Right.
That's a lot.
Well, yeah, no, and the reason for that, is because if you don't take enough of the samples, then you could very easily come back with a negative diagnosis just because you didn't get the actual tumor, because the tumors can be very small.
Exactly.
You got 12 to 16, and that's not fun. So after that, you expected to see a little bit of blood in the urine. Did you have a little blood in the urine?
No, I didn't.
Okay, good. So that's probably one of the things that they told you about.
They do tell you about that.
Yeah. It's one of the things to expect, that you can see a little bit, right? And over time, it would sort of clear out. You got that biopsy. It came back negative.
Came back negative several times. So I was like, okay, I'm good.
Yeah.
The last time I got a biopsy, it came back positive. By then, my PSA was up to 13.
So it had gone from 4 over time to 13. And remember, you were telling us the reason why you kept getting the biopsies is because the number kept going up.
They're looking.
Yeah.
They're looking.
Yeah.
What there's something in there. There's something in there.
Yeah.
So they kept sending me back for a biopsy. So I got 2 MRIs and I got 3 biopsies. Going back and forth.
Yeah.
And when I was finally diagnosed with cancer, I still was stunned and freaked out.
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah. Because it had been negative. You're like, dodged a bullet. Then the PSA is going up, and it's confusing. It's confusing to the physicians, which is why they kept asking you to do all those studies.
Right.
Because many men would just be like, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to go back for any more studies. But you kept going, and it's a good thing you did, because they said, yeah.
Now you have something.
Now you have something. They use a score called the Gleason score.
Right.
Do you remember what your Gleason score was?
I had 3 lesions in my prostate.
Yeah.
2 were 3 + 3, 6, and 1 was a 3 + 4, 7.
Okay.
So at that point, the doctor said, we need to take that out. You have what they would refer to as an aggressive cancer.
Yeah.
Absolutely everything was still contained within the organ.
Yeah.
So nothing had come out of the organ.
Right.
And I was...
Well, it's important for us to understand, for people to understand. So the Gleason score is 2 out of 10, right? Essentially, you get a score of 1 to 5 on each one of your, each one of those. And they do it twice, so you get 2 different scores. One of your scores was 6, which puts you in the intermediate range.
Right.
The other one was 7, which puts you in the high-risk range. And when you get to 7, the recommendation is always to think about some kind of treatment. Now, it's not always taking it out. It's not always chemotherapy. It's not always radiation. You mentioned that it was still in the capsule of the prostate.
Right.
To everybody else, that just means that it hadn't metastasized. We hear this word all the time. So you didn't have super advanced prostate cancer in terms of a grading system. What did they tell you they wanted to do?
The doctor recommended that I get either radiation or surgery, prostatectomy, having the prostate removed.
Having the prostate removed.
So in that visit where he diagnosed and also made a recommendation, by time coming to the end of the visit, when I had, I guess, come out of being stunned, I was able to ask one question.
Yeah, and?
What happens when you take out my prostate? And he simply said, you no longer make semen. And that was it. And I felt like there's got to be more to it than that. It can't just be that I don't make semen anymore.
Right.
You know, so that made me walk away saying, I've got to learn more.
Yeah, it just seemed too cursory. It's just like, oh yeah, you no longer make semen.
And that's exactly how he played it.
Yeah.
You know, and
so you got another opinion. You didn't settle for that one.
I went out and got 3 other opinions. I went to see another urologist. I went to see a radiation oncologist because the doctor had recommended I go get radiation.
Yeah.
It was either surgery or radiation.
Yeah.
So I went to see another urologist. I went to see a radiation oncologist, and then I went to see a urologist who actually did the surgery.
Okay.
So the urologist said the exact same thing that my urologist said.
Looked at the results, said, I would either take it out or do radiation. Okay.
The radiation oncologist said, well, you could do this, you know, you could do surgery or you could do radiation.
Okay, same
choice. This leaves the organ in your body, and then I went to see the surgeon. And
before you do that, what did the radiation oncologist say about the radiation? Because this is a seed implantation radiation.
One or two things. You could have the seeds, where they implant seeds in your organ, and then they shoot it with radiation.
Okay.
And then the seeds hold on to the radiation. They slowly emit the radiation through a period of time. Or you could just have the radiation and they just zap it right away.
Okay.
So then I went to see the surgeon.
Okay, so that's the second.
That was the
third surgeon.
That was the third
urologist, right?
The third opinion, yes.
Yeah.
That was my third opinion. The surgeon, I think he was impressed that I just came to talk. You know, because he was like, well, what do you want to do? I was like, I don't know what I want to do. I want you to look at my records and tell me what you think. And he looked at it and he read and he said, well, the first thing he said is, prostate cancer is a very slow-moving disease.
Very slow.
He said, I don't know why your doctor's recommending you do something about it right away. So that to me was like a clue, because I felt like my doctor gave me an oversimplification of what would happen should I take a treatment. And when this guy said, well, I don't know why he's pushing you to do that.
Right.
I was like, whoa, okay, so there's got to be more to all of this.
Right.
I am lacking information.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm treading.
Not inspire confidence, does it?
I'm treading in water where I don't know what's going on inside the waters.
Yeah.
So let me get out and figure it out. So at that point, I went on a hunt to learn.
Right.
I wanted to know more about what I was getting into. And as I learned more, I recognize, if you take out your prostate, there's a possibility of incontinence. There's a possibility of erectile dysfunction.
Sure.
I'm like, why didn't he explain that to me?
Yeah.
Why didn't somebody say, hey, all these things
And how old were you at the time of the diagnosis? What was your age?
66.
66. No man wants to be thinking, I'm going to have erectile dysfunction for the rest of my life at 66. We still got time to roll, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to go through that. The radiation, there's a possibility that you could wind up with a hole in your rectum. I'm like, what's that mean?
Right.
A hole in your rectum? That means I got to wear diapers all the time? I'm like, no, I'm looking for a quality of life. You know, if I'm coming to being in my 60s, I'm gonna lay back and roll through, but not when all those things are broken.
Yeah, yeah, no, exactly.
I'm like, I'm not down for that.
The list of complications, which doctors are supposed to always tell you, the list of complications can deter you just from listening to it. It's like the list of side effects that can possibly happen to a medication. After you left that doctor's office, you obviously had more questions than answers, but you had more answers than the other doctors had ever given.
I will tell you this. When I left that surgeon's office, I was, number one, when I walked in, I was a little peed off because this dude was charging me a consultation rate. It was like $500 to sit down and have a conversation.
Oh, wow. Well, this is also $500.
Hey. So,
yeah, Cash App, whatever, Zelle,
So I was like, wow, this guy is charging me. But when I left there, I was like, worth the money. To me, it was worth the money because he gave me an education. He didn't give me a lot of information, but he gave me the insight to say, you need to learn as much as you can before you take another step further.
What was your next step?
My next step was to learn. I went on a journey to find out what happens for each one of these treatments. What happens later in your life, what happens, during the process or the procedure, and what happens after the procedure to me.
Yeah.
And is there any other way to do this?
You know more about prostate cancer treatments than most human beings after you did that research.
Absolutely, man. I mean, I went through everything from surgery to HIFU to all that stuff.
And then you decided to go to an alternative medicine route. Tell us what your first step was in the non-traditional world of medicine. Walk us through that. Can you walk us through that?
I had a chiropractic visit.
A chiropractic?
My back was bothering me. I went to see the chiropractor, and I was gonna
say that's fringe, man.
Right.
Chiropractic snapped something in the prostate.
Right, and I was just talking, because I was just letting it all out. I did this, and this is what's happening to me, and I got prostate cancer. Yeah. I got to do this, I got to do that. Yeah. And the chiropractor said, "I hear everything you're saying. Why don't you go see a homeopath?" And I was like, "What the heck is that? A homeopath?" I knew nothing about homeopathic medicine. I went to see the homeopath.
Tell us what it is, because I know you looked. You were like, I'm never going to another doctor without knowing what that is. Homeopathy. What is homeopath?
Homeopathy is the practice that believes the body can heal itself.
Yes, it's designed to do that after all.
Right.
But homeo means the same.
Right.
And so they have a philosophy, and that is
they use like to repair like.
Right.
So
like kills like was one of the phrases. Yeah.
So I went to see the homeopath, and what I got out of it was she was like, "Stop putting all these other things in your body. Just stop." So I went raw. I went on a raw diet. Just because she was like, you've got all these other influences that you're constantly putting in your body that's probably assisting whatever's growing in your body. Stop putting anything in there. Just go with the things that come out of the ground. Yeah. Eat those things raw.
In the most natural state you can get them in.
And organic if you possibly can.
Right.
And let's see what happens. Give it a month. If that one doctor said to you it's a slow-moving disease, give it a month, let's see what happens.
1 month, she said, going raw vegan.
Right.
And she expected to have some change in the PSA.
No. She just said, let's see how you feel. Let's do that for a while. So I actually went raw for 2.5 months.
Okay. Overachiever.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
yeah.
man.
I mean, that's Jacob Williams. That's what you do.
I was scared.
Yeah, no. I'm being serious. Yeah. But why wouldn't you go over and beyond to live and
I was
thrive?
like,
I mean,
okay, well, let's try that.
Yeah,
let's do that.
Yeah.
So I took a shot at it. And then that homeopath told me to go get a mistletoe shot from an alternative doctor. Okay, so I had no idea.
Mistletoe?
I had no idea what she was talking. What's a mistletoe shot? So I went to see this alternative doctor.
So where do they put the, because mistletoe, when you have the mistletoe,
mistletoe's above your head. It's that plant, right?
You don't hang it.
Hang it above your prostate. No. So
many kisses and no. Okay, we got to delete that one. Okay. that definitely has. Sorry.
So I went to see this alternative doctor, and basically he was telling me that the first thing he said to me was, "You're here early."
Yeah.
He said most people come to me, as a Hail Mary after they've been through surgery, after they've been through chemo.
Tried everything else.
They've tried everything else.
Then
I'm
they
the
come to
last.
you.
I'm the last resort. He said, but you've not done any of these things. Why are you here so early? And I just told him I wanted to keep the organs in my body. I didn't want to have surgery. I didn't want to, move things around. If I could do anything before doing that, how about we use the surgery as the last minute, as the last thing I do?
Yeah, the last ditch effort. And that made so much sense to you. Plus, I have down here to ask you, did your decision to choose those other routes, was it the fear that you could have those complications? Was it fear-based to not go through with the radiation or with the surgery? Your answer would be?
I was afraid of everything.
Absolutely.
I was afraid of the radiation, the surgery. I was afraid of cancer. I was in between. And I was like, how do I keep both of these at bay?
Yeah.
How do I keep the surgery away from my body? How do I keep the cancer? How do I get the cancer out?
Yeah. Yeah.
And being that I was told that it was a slow-moving disease and I had time, then I was going to try my best to do whatever it was that was the most positive result for my body.
You had a bunch of these mistletoe infusions. You had some other things as well. What was the biggest challenge? After you said, I'm going to settle on this road, what was the hardest thing for you to do, knowing that this road is the road that you took? Because all of the possibilities were hard. What was that challenge when you chose to do it this way?
The biggest challenge was to put my head down and to do it. Don't look around, don't look back, don't listen to all the other voices that are saying, oh, I don't know if that's gonna work, man. Ooh, that's a strong possibility. You're gonna wind up with cancer throughout your whole entire body.
Yeah, I mean, people must have said that.
Oh,
people
yeah,
said, you're crazy for,
I was completely
you're crazy for
freaked
doing
out.
all this hocus pocus. Why don't you just do what the traditional doctor says? Get it out or do radiation.
Right.
Many people probably said that to you.
A number of people.
Yeah.
A number of people. But I'll tell you this, I have a sister who's a doctor.
Okay.
She's a OBGYN, and she said two things to me over a period of time. One was listen to your doctor.
Listen to
your doctor. She said to me, listen to your doctor.
Well, it was too late for that because it was like 4 doctors and you didn't.
She said, listen to your doctor, and we had that discussion immediately after I got my diagnosis. She was like, you need to listen to your doctor.
I see. Okay, so she was telling you before you went down this road of multiple.
And I was like, ooh.
Got it.
And when I was saying I may go down this road of something different, she said, whatever you do, you must become fanatical.
Don't look back.
She said, whatever you do, you must become fanatical. And I'm going to tell you right now, that conversation I had with my sister, she said that off the fly. If I ask her today, do you remember saying that to me? She would not.
She wouldn't remember.
Because that was a very flip statement from her.
You never know how people are being used to give the message to you.
So based on her saying that, because I know who my sister is, she's very...
Yeah.
Based on that, I was like, that's me. I'm gonna go for. I'm going all in.
You had a number of the mistletoe infusions. We talked about this vitamin C, high dose vitamin C as well. You stayed on the raw vegan diet, but then you started to bring in some other things. You didn't stay raw vegan. You're not raw vegan now. What stuff are you eating now?
Actually, I'm eating seafood. It's better to tell you what I don't eat, okay?
Okay.
I don't eat certain meats, like I don't eat pork. Yeah. I don't eat chicken, but I eat fish. I will have a piece of beef every now and then. I need to know where it comes from. Right. Because what I learned is that, or what I'm believing in, is processed food is not good for our body.
No question.
And processed food is everywhere.
Yeah.
Processed food we're talking about animal products as well, like most of the animal products that are out there for us, they have a lot of antibiotics, and they have steroids, and they have They have a lot of chemical processing in it.
Yeah.
Those animals are eating processed food.
Right.
You know, they're eating wheat,
The
corn,
feed
and
is
soy.
processed, and so then
Yeah.
we process them. Yeah.
The wheat, corn, and soy has been refined, and
Yeah.
so they're eating it. They don't know. Their bodies are not digesting it properly. Our bodies are not digesting it properly. So
It just
I don't.
gets passed down.
Right.
So you brought back in obviously some animal flesh. How about eggs and dairy?
If I don't eat dairy.
No dairy whatsoever. No creams, no ice cream, no cheese. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And
What about eggs?
I do eat eggs if I know where they came from.
If you know where they came from.
Right.
Where do they have to have come from?
They have to come from a farm that is raising animals in a responsible way. Again, no feeds,
Yeah.
no processed foods, no antibiotics, no steroids, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
If I know where it comes from, and I found a number of sources where I can get animal products from. I only eat wild caught fish. I won't eat fish that's been farm raised.
Yeah. Yeah. From the time of that diagnosis until today, how much time is that? When were you first diagnosed with prostate cancer?
2.5 years ago.
So this is 2.5 years.
Yeah.
The last time you checked your PSA, what was the PSA?
Oh, my PSA is still high. I have no cancerous lesions in my body, but I still have a high PSA.
What was the number?
30.
30.
I have a 30.
So it's 30. How do you know that there's no cancerous lesions? How did they prove that to you?
They keep sending me back for MRIs. I get an MRI. I will not get another biopsy.
Yeah.
Out of the question.
Yeah. So the MRI that was negative at the beginning, did the MRI ever turn positive? Did the MRI ever show lesions?
Oh, yes.
So,
Yes.
and now the MRI shows that the lesions are gone.
Gone. Nothing.
So at the end of the day, if somebody asks you, hey man, you're nuts for doing that. This is cancer, man. You got to go do what the other doctor said. What you did worked. Your MRI showed that the lesions, and we say lesions when we're talking about these little spots of tumors, but the lesions that were there before, you had 3, there's 0.
Yes.
What advice would you give to men who are contemplating just getting screened? And then I'm going to ask you, what advice would you give to men who are diagnosed with prostate cancer?
About men who are thinking about getting screened, go get screened. Without a doubt, know what's going on inside your body. Go get the blood tests, go get the labs, go get all that done just so you can know what's going on. Then you get to pick and choose as to what you would like to do. And if the doctor says, I recommend this, this, and this, you get to pick and choose from those recommendations. It's your body.
Right.
You do what you want with it.
One of the reasons why men still today don't go get screened for prostate, and we sort of cringe, is because they think the diagnosis comes from the rectal exam, a digital finger rectal exam, where the urologist is using his or her finger to find prostate cancer. Did you have to undergo a digital rectal exam?
Oh yeah, I went through a number of them. That's nothing compared to everything else.
Good.
Do that. Go get that exam. It's not a big deal.
Okay. But many guys are like, nah, I don't want to have it. You know, many things run through their heads. The
Well-
initial screen, however, is just the blood test.
Right.
They do have to do that exam, but you didn't do that exam out the gate. The first thing you did was a simple blood test.
Right.
What's that bit of advice after a man has developed prostate cancer and he's trying to decide? What would you tell him to do?
The best thing I could tell somebody is after getting diagnosed is to, what I did was I tried to get my body in the best shape it could be in to handle what was coming.
Yeah.
I didn't know what was coming, so I decided to get in shape. I decided to stay in shape. You know, my body wanted exercise, so I went all the way in. I began to exercise. I was doing yoga and going and running and taking spin classes.
Yeah.
But what I learned is that you need to build muscle, and muscle helps your immune system.
That's right.
It helps your metabolism.
That's right.
It helps to fight disease.
Right. And then you got these guns like this
Right,
too. I
right.
mean, that's the added benefit.
It's the biggest repository of glucose. Glucose is a danger in your body.
Yeah.
So when sugar's running through your body, if muscle is grabbing the sugar
And
before it goes anywhere else,
Yep.
you're good.
Yeah. So you started doing that. Now your diet is the best it's been in a really long time, although you changed it a little bit. You sort of rattled that cage a little bit with raw vegan. Now you're bringing in super healthy. You know where the food source is coming from, and you're exercising. Do you drink alcohol?
Okay, I put it to you like this. In a month, I probably had two beverages.
So it's rare for you to drink alcohol. Do you smoke a cigar?
Oh, no.
Do you smoke hookah?
No, but I do smoke weed.
Okay. In fact, that's what I said. No, just kidding. Yeah. No, okay. All right. So cannabis, and we have a whole episode about the medicinal benefits of cannabis. And what I always said, I said to Rashawn Ali, who was my guest co-host at that time, there's no debate about the medicinal benefits. I just don't want people to smoke it because smoke is unnatural for the lungs.
Okay, so you say not to smoke it. It's unnatural for the lungs. But I don't want to take a gummy because to me it's processed food.
Yeah,
It's got all these chemicals.
Because you don't know what's in that gummy.
I don't know what's in that gummy.
Okay, so
and it's certainly not written down.
Right.
It's not written down on a package.
Right. You don't know how they made it. In fact, you don't even know if there's cannabis in the thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Could just be CBD oil.
Okay. Here's my point. There's other ways to consume and benefit from the cannabis medicinal properties than to smoke it. Even smoking marijuana can cause problems in the body. That's for a different episode, but I want you to find another route because the smoke can cause problems that you don't foresee. I'm so happy that you came straight from the hip with this today. I really appreciate you being on this platform for the first time, telling it publicly, and that your success story continues. I would love for you to come back and let's review how things are going in about a year. Let's keep our viewers and their families, because this is not just about the men. This is about the women and the people that love them.
It affects everybody.
Everybody. Man, I really appreciate you coming by to the Health Mastery Cafe.
Thank you.
No, absolutely.
I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to tell my story because I think people need to hear it. Men need to hear it.
Yeah.
Men need to be aware that, this is not something you should not talk about. It's something you should be talking about.
Right.
It's something that should be out there and men should be doing something about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All right, Cafe connoisseurs, that's one to grow on. What Jacob told us was, he taught us the power of another opinion. And in medicine, we don't really tell you that. We don't tell you how important it is for you, if you are not feeling confident in a diagnosis or treatment decision, that a second opinion is the way to go. Jacob had 4 different people to weigh in before he made a decision, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you're confident about the first decision, great, but don't forget about the power of the second opinion. He also told us that support is critical. When he first got that diagnosis, he was unable to really grasp what was going on because you get stunned when somebody says that you have cancer. It's not like you're reading it on the news about somebody else. It's about you, and having that person around, no matter who it is, to help you digest that. One of the things that we know is that prostate cancer is really common. The statistics show that anywhere between 1 and 8 in the general population of men will develop prostate cancer in their lives. Men of African descent, black men, have a much higher rate of developing prostate cancer and much more advanced. That number is more like 1 in 4. And those statistics, I don't like a lot of statistics, as you guys know, I've said it before, because the statistics themselves are not motivating. How many guys are going to listen to those stats and then run out and go get a screen? The truth is they provoke more fear than they do actually doing something positive for you. What I want you to hear is that prostate cancer is highly treatable and it's slow moving. Jacob told us that on multiple occasions. It doesn't grow really quickly. But because certain populations, particularly black men, can have much more advanced disease, you've got to be thinking like Jacob Williams thought. The upper limit of normal of a prostate specific antigen, PSA test, is 4. If you are an African American man or of African descent and your prostate, your PSA is 4, go see a urologist immediately. Why? Because we've got to move that range a little bit for African American men, for black men, because the disease is much more advanced. If your number is not under 2, in my opinion, you should be getting another test. If it's 2 and between 2 and 4, get another test. If it's 4, go see a urologist right away. Pay attention to the risk factors for prostate cancer. The main one is a first-degree relative with prostate cancer, whether that's your dad or your brother. Now, it doesn't matter what you think about your brother. It doesn't matter what you think about your dad. Oh, my dad didn't take care of himself. Oh, he smoked. Oh, my brother drinks too much. I want you to still go get screened. Remember, the screen for prostate cancer is not the digital rectal exam. We're going to talk to an expert a little bit later about what the first step in prostate cancer screening is. Spoiler alert, it's a blood test. Go get that blood test. My general recommendation for everybody, age 45, all men should have that first screen. Black men, I think, should be starting at age 40. And remember the rules. If your score is above 2, go get a retest. If your score is 4 or above, go see the urologist. And then here are my things for you to prevent and avoid prostate cancer. Number 1, don't eat processed meat. The WHO is really clear about this. Processed meat is a carcinogen. What does that mean? It causes cancer. Number 2, stop smoking. And that means smoking everything. All of it contributes to your risk of many cancers, but certainly prostate cancer. The second one is avoid drinking large amounts of alcohol. For my men who don't drink, don't start. For my men who drink about a moderate amount, you have a drink or 2 a day, I want you to cut it down by 50%. And for my men who know they drink too much, I want you to figure out how to stop. Why? Number 1, you may have a dependency. In other words, you may have, on the spectrum of addiction, you may be dependent on it. And to know that you can reel that back in and not drink any is important, not just for prostate cancer, but it's important for your entire life. And then the second part is, drinking heavily is like adding lighter fluid to a fire when it comes to prostate cancer. Stop drinking. Eat the rainbow is the other one. So you heard Jacob say he went raw vegan. I think you should eat more plants. Whether or not you go completely vegan or not is not the issue, but you should eat more plants. And the recommendation is, if you eat the rainbow, blue, purple, red, green, orange, and yellow, and you do that most days a week, you get all of the variety of phytochemicals, that's plant-based chemicals, that fight cancer. That's what I want you to be thinking about. And here's the last thing for my guys. You got to get the gut down. And this is not a beauty contest. This is about inflammation. The fat that lives underneath the abdominal wall is fat that is very active. Although it seems like it's sitting there, inside your body is very active, releasing all kinds of chemicals, cytokines, chemokines. Bad news, not just for your health in general, especially your metabolism. In terms of prostate cancer, inflammation can drive the worsening of disease. So get the gut down. Next on the Café, we talk to a leading urologist who specializes in just this, the treatment and diagnosis of prostate cancer. Dr. Courtney Hollowell from Chicago is going to come up after the break.
Find the Health Mastery Cafe on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at the Health Mastery Cafe, and subscribe on YouTube also.
Welcome back to the Café, everybody. Who says that a conversation about prostate cancer can't be engaging and informative? We just heard from Jacob Williams, and he gave us his story. But now I want you to meet our guest, the incredible Dr. Courtney Hollowell, who is a urologist who's not only on the pioneering end of prostate cancer treatment, but also in research as well. He's a renowned researcher. Dr. Hollowell is the chair of urology at Cook County Hospital, one of the nation's largest public hospitals. And he's also one of the country's foremost thought leaders in prostate care, from robotic-assisted surgery to genetic markers. Basically, if there's anything that's high-tech, cutting edge around prostate cancer, he is a game changer, and we're glad that he's here on the Café. Dr. Hollowell, thanks for joining us on the Café.
It's really good to be here with you guys at the Café.
Yeah, so this story, Dr. Hollowell, obviously you've heard of similar stories and things like this a lot, but I had not, and I'm sure many of our viewers won't have heard anything like this before. You heard the story. Tell us, what would you advise Jacob at this point, given what you know?
Well, first I would say to Jacob that he's not alone. Look, many of us are going to be diagnosed with prostate cancer and have to deal with all of the new information that's coming in every day about what to do about their prostate cancer. Let me explain. A PSA is just a test that gives us an idea that maybe there's a red flag and we need to look a little closer. In other words, not everyone who has an elevated PSA has prostate cancer. They could have inflammation, they could have infection, they could even have an enlarged prostate. And remember, an enlarged prostate isn't necessarily prostate cancer. So when that red flag kind of goes up, we want to look a little bit closer with that PSA of 4. I would tell an individual with a PSA of 4 that they have roughly about a 1 in 4 risk of finding prostate cancer on a biopsy. In fact, today we typically do an MRI, what's called a multiparametric MRI, in patients who have an elevated PSA, or we have some form of suspicion that we need to look closer. An MRI is really a great non-invasive way to determine whether or not a biopsy needs to be done. I tell people this way. A MRI is going to tell you whether or not you fit in certain risk categories. It will give us a better idea of how we need to counsel those patients on what form of treatment they need to have, or whether or not they need to have treatment at all.
So he had a Gleason score of 6.7, and the final doctor that he said that he met with said, "Why do you have to go to surgery? Why do you have to do radiation of any sort? This is a slow-growing cancer. Why don't we just watch? Watchful waiting." What's your thought there?
I would look at this in a sort of an analogy. Let's take prostate cancer as though it were farm animals, and they were within a gate, and that gate is the prostate, right? And if you have a pig, you've got a hen, and you've got birds in that enclosure. The pig is that low risk prostate cancer. It's slow growing, it's less likely to potentially be an issue for the patient. It almost never gets out of the enclosure. And so those are the patients that most likely can continue to be not aggressively treated. In fact, that's the majority of patients being treated for prostate cancer today.
The majority of patients are slow growing and you don't have to move that quick. The majority.
Yes. And so those are patients that we say, why don't we do a active surveillance protocol? We're not telling a patient to go home and never come back to the doctor. What we're telling those patients is the likelihood that you are going to live with your prostate cancer and not die from your prostate cancer. But the vast majority of them do extremely well just being followed. The hen, however, is that category, what we call intermediate risk group. That hen, if it flaps its wings, can get out of the pen that's containing the animals, and it's more common than, for example, that pig getting out. And so we want to watch that individual a little bit more closely and potentially offer treatment, because that's that one that, we have a lot of caution about, right? We know that there is a possibility that it can get out of the enclosure. The last is the high risk category. That's the bird. That bird can flap its wings and go anywhere and go outside of that enclosure very easily, and potentially can go all over the body. And so you can see that prostate cancer that's high risk or intermediate risk, we spend more time now focusing in on the treatment of those individuals.
That's a fantastic analogy. People won't forget this enclosure, this barn. The enclosure is the prostate gland itself, and that bird who's easily to, in the cancer speak, metastasize, leave the capsule of the organ and go out and cause a lot of problems. That's advanced disease. So thank you for that. Let me ask you about this. One of the reasons that we don't catch prostate cancers enough is because we don't get screened enough, particularly in certain groups, particularly African Americans in this country. One of the reasons might be that they still harken back to the old school, hey, that the only way to screen is the digital rectal exam. DRE, meaning a urologist uses his or her finger and in the rectum finds the cancer and goes from there. Many guys are averse to that, so they say, I don't want to go. Tell us where we are with screening for prostate cancer.
Yeah, I think you're bringing up a very good point here. In my eyes, a digital rectal exam, and I think throughout the country now you're finding, is less likely to be utilized. We know that before PSA, it was all we had. Right. And so you would place your finger into the rectum and you could feel the backside of the prostate. You can feel for lumps and bumps and all abnormalities. But we now know that the vast majority of those patients, by the time they have a nodule on the back of their prostate, they usually have more advanced disease. So PSA is a blood test, and we can get a better idea of whether or not there's a concern using PSA than a digital rectal exam ever could do. So I pretty much recommend to all of my primary care doctors not just to forego doing the rectal exam and just use the PSA screening.
Yeah, I actually counsel my patients as a cardiologist. If you're going to have a DRE, if you're going to have a rectal exam, it should be by a urologist, not a cardiologist. It should be by a urologist. That's not knocking primary care doctors who have a penchant for the prostate and the exam. I'm just saying by and large, the experience that they might have is going to pale in comparison to somebody who thinks about prostate and prostate health all the time. So if there is a DRE to be had, it should be done by a urologist. Tell me about the biopsy, because Jacob told us about the experience. And boy, I mean, you shudder when you hear each one of those 16 shots that he talked about, feeling it in the head of the penis, and just the feeling that he got is a deterrent as well. And that alone can keep men from going to get diagnosed. What is your thought there?
Yeah, look, I think that all of the ways to either screen or detect any form of cancer, it can produce a deterrent for individuals coming in to even be looked at. And so, we have to be very mindful about that. So we only want to use the things that potentially we need to use. That's why MRI now has become an extremely important component of the diagnosis of prostate cancer. I want to be clear here, an MRI doesn't supplant or take the place of a biopsy. You still need to have a pathologist look underneath the microscope and look at the tissue and determine whether or not, in fact, that is prostate cancer, but also how aggressive that prostate cancer is. What we have found is that MRI can lower the number of individuals that require a biopsy. In other words, if they have a normal MRI, they may not need a biopsy. Why? This is because an MRI can subcategorize patients into different groups. And those groups, what we call PIRAD scores, can give us a better idea of whether or not this is clinically meaningful prostate cancer. If I were to do a MRI on a patient and the group they sit in on the MRI is that slow growing, not clinically significant type of tumor, then I may not need to do a biopsy. I could just continue to follow that patient.
If cost were not a problem, is this multiplanar MRI? Would that be if we could do MRIs on all men, would we not have the deaths from prostate cancer? Is it that good? Is the MRI that good?
Well, I think that we, at this current point, we do a lot of MRIs, prosthetic MRIs, multi-parametric MRIs
Parametric, yeah.
on, a lot of patients. But I think you drew attention to a very important point, and that is if money were no object. And unfortunately, you and I live in a world where money is always an object, and it's expensive to do MRIs, and it's time consuming. And and also there aren't that many MRIs in most towns, and so you can imagine with a disease like prostate cancer. Let's back up here. Remember, prostate cancer is the most common non-skin cancer in men. So you can imagine how many MRIs would need to be done in order to, screen so many individuals. And MRIs are also used for a whole host of other things that have nothing to do with urology. And so it would be incredibly difficult to get all those individuals done unless the number of MRIs, which are tens of millions of dollars, these MRI machines are extremely expensive, and so we would have to invest in far more MRIs, almost like how we have CT scans. We have a lot of CT scans, but much less MRIs in most healthcare inventories.
So that's not in the cards, but it sounds like the multi-parametric, thank you, multi-parametric MRI is good. We call it, everybody, we call it the test characteristics of a study, that they're so good that if it were no object, that we'd be doing much better. Let me ask you about this. Very often when I was in medical school, we go through a disease process, and the presenter is pointing the pointer, and it says, here's this disease. Let's call it, let's say, cardiovascular disease or prostate. Here's prostate cancer, and black men die more of this, and black people die more of this, and so you keep hearing this, and it's really easy to go away with that black people just have everything wrong with them. I want you to settle this for us. The reason that black men have advanced prostate cancer, does that have to do with being black? Or is there some genetic predisposition, for example, in breast cancer, where mutations that helped women deal with malaria, for example, now make it easy for prostate cancer to advance and under the radar? Is there something similar like that? Black men, for example, in sort of down through the ages, developed a mutation that helped them with something else that now is disadvantageous. Do we have something like that?
Well, you're drawing attention to something that, quite honestly, Dr. Dave, I've spent my entire life trying to, shed light on and understand better. We know that, for example, Black men are at least 70% more likely to be diagnosed with prostate cancer. In fact, African American men have the highest rate of prostate cancer than any ethnicity in the world. We also know that individuals diagnosed with prostate cancer, if they're African American, they're about 2 times more likely to die of prostate cancer than their white counterparts. Now, that's really concerning, obviously, given the fact that prostate cancer is the most common cancer in men. And so we clearly know there's a healthcare disparity that exists with prostate cancer. But you're drawing attention to something that, look, if I had all the answers to it, I'd probably have a Nobel Prize now, and that is why. And I think that we know that the reason for prostate cancer risk and death in African Americans is probably due to multiple factors, and it's the interplay of those multiple factors that potentially increases our risk of incidence, but also death. I mean, you think about it. And this is an interesting general point. Black men have the highest rate of all and the highest death rate of most cancers. So I know that we're talking about prostate cancer today, but if we took out the word prostate cancer and said lung cancer, it would still be true. If we took out the word lung cancer or prostate cancer and inserted colorectal cancer, this same point would be true. We're more likely to be diagnosed. We're more likely to die of the disease when diagnosed. So, why is that? Well, I mean, I think that there's a number of issues there. I mean, the first is that clearly genetics may play a role. We know from recent studies that, for example, you drew attention to breast cancer just a moment ago. Well, many of your viewers might not know that recent evidence suggests that a gene mutation called BRCA, BRCA 1 or 2, which is a very common gene mutation that occurs in women who get breast cancer, that in fact, Black men have a much higher rate of BRCA mutations as well. We believe this also contributes to because BRCA in itself is protective, and a mutation in BRCA, results in more risk for cancer, and in this case, prostate cancer. Um, and so we also know that having that mutation usually results in men having the diagnosis of prostate cancer much earlier than the normal range of prostate cancer. So you can imagine this could be a perfect storm, right? It could be that, all right, we have potentially this gene mutation where making a recommendation to be screened maybe later on, like everybody else who should be screened for prostate cancer. So when it's found, they're already much further advanced in the disease. And so, should we be moving the goalposts much earlier for individuals who, one, either are at high risk, and those high risk groups are one, African American men, and two, individuals with a family history of prostate cancer. So, I know we're talking about African American men, but in fact, if I were not African American and I had a first degree relative like my father or my brother who had prostate cancer, my rate of prostate cancer at least doubles the chance of having prostate cancer. So they fit in a high risk group as well. And so that's why we may think that maybe we're screening these individuals too late. The other is that we know men, particularly Black men, don't get screened as often, right? We live in environments where there's healthcare deserts, and we don't have healthcare around us, or we don't have access to the healthcare facilities that are around us. We lack insurance, for example, and so, there's other issues where Black men usually and more likely live in environments where, there's industrial factories around them. And so there may be environmental factors that are playing a role. And we all know about the, Western diet that we all eat is just really making us all sick.
Yeah, yeah. And so I'll just layer on that comment about access to healthcare. I think in medical conditions like prostate cancer and heart disease, if we just said the men who don't have to worry about being in a healthcare desert, men that don't have to worry about being able to get healthcare, but who have the ability to do it, if those men simply got the screens, prostate cancer in this particular case, the numbers would plummet. So I hear what you're saying, and it's really important when we think about the population, but the people who have the means are not doing it as much. And I think this message to men, I think, is exactly what we want to hear. I want to just end with this, Dr. Hollowell, and I really appreciate your time on this and the insight. What's left out of the discussion with patients? Something's missing. Can you fill us in on things that you say to second opinions, third opinions that change men's minds that you find often is left out of the conversation?
Well, the first is that I make a general statement. We talked about men and their fear or anxiety about being, screened or potentially even treated. But another issue that occurs is that men many times tell themselves that I feel fine. So because they tell themselves they feel fine, they think that there's nothing going on in their body. And I always say to individuals that feeling fine is not the same as being healthy. We know that prostate cancer can be treated and cured in the high 90 percent category in patients who are found early. Unfortunately, early prostate cancer usually has no signs. And so when patients tell me, but I'm feeling fine, I was feeling fine, I say, okay, that's when you want to be screened
That's right.
for, certain illnesses. That's the
That's the one.
time at which, that's the target, that's the area, that's the sweet spot. That's when we can make meaningful change in that patient's life. By the way, you're a cardiologist. It's no different with high blood pressure. It's no different with high blood glucose and blood sugar. These are all things that contribute to heart disease, for example. And any of these issues, if found early, we can make meaningful changes in that patient's life and potentially cure them of their disease.
And that's exactly what you just underscored was what Jacob Williams just told us in the segment right before you. He changed his diet, he changed his exercise, his outcomes changed. So this is not just some data, hocus pocus. This is, for him, real life. This is happening for him. And to your point, very often our men will say, hey, listen, I feel fine. My message to them is not everything that can harm you hurts. Not everything that can take you out gives you a symptom, and you don't know unless you test. Dr. Courtney Hollowell, thank you so much for joining us on the Café.
It's been great being with you today.
Thanks so much. Nixon, that's so many jewels. That you have just dropped all over the floor here for us. I hope people are drinking back what you're pouring out, because that was exactly what we wanted to hear, what we needed to hear. Super useful for us. I want to say thank you to you, Dr. Lee, for all of that. Thanks for being here on the Health Mastery Café.
It was my pleasure. It's an honor to be here. Thank you both.
We'll be right back.